3 of Around the Table with Authors of the Resistance. Of course, I got two of our other founders here tonight. We've got Kindra and we have Bev. And tonight we're going to be talking about a very charged topic, particularly, well, religious persecution and religious freedom and what is happening right now in the United States. And the reason why this topic seemed to be the highlight, I felt, is because, well, for one, the conclave is happening right now, and we all know, the variables that go into that, and how many people, hundreds of thousands of people across the planet, that is very important too. So all of these things, even if you aren't part of Catholic Church, kind of have residual effects across many different branches of control and power. And so it's been very important, I feel, with emphasizing Constitution and especially the founding fathers, is that America was founded by people who practiced deism. So they all didn't necessarily believe like in one denominational way. This was a group of men who were all incredibly educated on a number of fronts, and they were dealing with America as it was being born in a post-colonial world. And what that means, if we go back and really to the root of why it was so important that religious freedom was written into the Constitution, is it goes all the way back to Plymouth Rock. And a lot of people sometimes forget that. And I actually had a British friend that said something to me, and she said, I don't understand where all this overzealous, purity culture comes from. And I said, well, it comes from Puritanism. And that's the reason why we called it that. But it goes one deeper than that, because if you actually look at your country and why these people fled England, was because they were being burned and hung for being heretics and going against the English Orthodox Church. And they believed so overzealous in such a way that the people of England considered them to be not okay. Like, there's something going on up there. There's something psychologically off. And then they were also persecuting them. And I'm not saying that that was the right answer either. Persecuting them to the point that they were burning people, that's really no different than the Spanish Inquisition, which is also very relevant. And all of this is basis on what leads us into the witch trials. And actually, even with that said, people think witch trial and they immediately think Salem, and that's not because it's not unfounded. But the first witch trials didn't even actually take place in Salem. They took place in Connecticut, and sometime before. And then that same hysteria spread, and it's the same thing that happened with the Inquisition. And this all goes back, honestly, as far as Constantine, and drawing from the Hebrew-based faith and appropriating things about what they were believing, especially when it came to the man known as Jesus, and the people that had followed after him up until he was crucified, and thereafter created what we know to be the first Christian churches, which Constantine gets credit for, but actually he did not found them. There were sects of people that were different groups that represented that church. And that is actually emphasized in the book of Revelation. This church over here, this church, the 7 churches, are actually representative of the branches of those people that separated off from the disciples to spread the gospel message. And then Constantine took it because he seen it was spreading so far and so wide. And paganism, especially as it came from Rome, was starting to be frowned upon, and the empire was falling apart. And people were starting to get more progressive in ways, especially after hearing that message, because, to be honest, no matter what you believe, the idea of what Jesus did was the most ultimate activism act of his time and on record. I mean, it's just the way it is. He's doing such progressive things that it was sending shockwaves. And the people
Mm-hmm.
in power saw that that was something that they could appropriate and they could use to force conversion on other people so that they can control them and steal an idea that was meant to be a good message for humanity and use it in order to exert power over them and make them lose their freedoms. Well, see, our founders knew that. And I'm going to shut up and let you guys go ahead and say anything what you want to add in here, but because there's so much to unpack. But the reason why I was prompted by this, like I said, the conclave, and then we have had some executive orders that are related to this in the last week that are just absurd and scary.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, as you know, I'm pagan, and I was raised Baptist, so I'm pretty well aware of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And as an adult, I chose a different path, and I no shame on anybody that chose to stay with whatever religion they chose to stay with. You got. I'm pretty open, and as long as you're a good person, I don't care what faith you are. Practice the good tenets of your faith, not the oppression that the people that took that faith are forcing on people by this is the one way and there is no other way. And you know there's lots of ways, and
Mm-hmm.
we all find our own path.
The problem with telling people that they have to do it your way or you're going to remove their ability to have an enjoyable life or revoke them from their pursuit of happiness abolishes everything that the Constitution stood for. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're not supposed to be a country where I tell you you're going to go to hell if you don't do what I say, if you don't have four children by the time you're 25, you don't get married, and you don't do this, that, and the other. That's fine for you if you believe that. That's fine for you if you believe that you need to cover yourself and do veiling, which is actually prevalent in many different religious backgrounds, not just, you know, Islam, or it's even it's prevalent in Catholicism if we look at, a nun's habit. Um, Veiling is done for different reasons, and most of the time it's because association with hair has to do with power and insight and things like that, and keeping it
Mm-hmm.
where people can't take from you. And everybody has the right to veil as they want to. The problem becomes an issue when we start looking at people and trying to compare who they are with their appearance and stereotyping it as being just one way when you don't. I mean, if somebody isn't hurting other people, if they're going to their job and they're paying their taxes and they're doing everything, like we have so many legal immigrants that are being violated left and right, and even Americans now, and these people have never done anything wrong just because they're different. It's that is going backwards. That's going away from everything that made nations great. Nations that
Mm-hmm.
cannot house their orphans or feed their widows and are attacking all of the people that bring anything good into their country because they believe that only one certain specific type of belief system or people are actually valuable, are the ones that bring their own selves down. And that's the reason why Constantine chose to go and start doing what became the Vatican, and look at how powerful and still standing it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a testament, whether you believe in it or not, that it's about unifying people. Now, the way that they did it to begin with is horrible. And
Mhm.
but that's the point. You can't go about unifying people by forcing them and then expecting that you're not going to have repercussions that come
Mm-hmm.
with the loss.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who was raised Mormon and am agnostic now, like a lot of people just seem to fail to realize that usually the reason why people deconstruct, like deconstruct and go elsewhere or just become atheist or, whatever other faiths they usually move into is because of the people, not necessarily the faith itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a hard lesson that a lot of them really need to learn.
Well, if you look at some of the things about this, it's described as there's supposed to be this great apostasy, which is basically what's happened. Where we're at right now in the timeline is there's been so many people that left whatever church they went to, or are now really falling more into being agnostic. In my case, I'm a Yahuwah Gnostic. But I've been through a lot of different spiritual paths, and that's why I feel the way I do. Like, I'm not going to discredit other people, and I'm not going to tell them that, you're not going to get into celestial heaven unless you are so and so's so many sub number. You understand where I'm going with that. There's all of these different conditioning culty rites that, when it comes down to it, are the things that undo the goodness in humanity. Where if you want to actually bring people to believe in what you do, they're going to follow you based on what you put out in your own actions, what you have to say, what you give to them in life that does something good for them, not intimidates them and makes them feel like they have to be this certain way to be accepted, in the background constantly putting on this mask or this uniform to present a way that inside does not match with who they are at all. Then you're playing a part. And for people that like control, yeah, maybe that looks good, one size fits all, everybody's lined up and everything's orderly and organized. But you got to ask yourself, why does someone want that? Why do they want everything like that? Not to say that organization and structure isn't good, it's great. But we should not have a government set up based off religious persecution of other people on one politician's viewpoint. And that was something that the very founders themselves recognized. So what is going on here? I mean, like, the whole point is in an effort to build a more perfect union. Meaning they knew that there was no perfect union being built even then, that they were acknowledging these things, that they were going to try to build this country based off things that they have seen and heard from people, to try to make it that perfect union, knowing that it was not yet there, knowing that there would be constant need to reassess, because as time advances and people change, things change, we have to reassess. Is everyone getting those liberties the way that they're supposed to be distributed to people, or are we falling short? And of course, yes, we found multiple times where we've fallen short. We're still falling short. Look at what's happening with the natives. But yeah, so that kind of brought me to I want to pull up right here, and I'm doing it on screen. It's from the White House, presidential actions. This was actually from February 6, 2025, and that is the eradicating anti-Christian bias. And I know a lot of people on the surface are going to be like, well, he's just trying to make it for people that are experiencing Christian hatred and backlash to not have that happen anymore, which is valid. It's not that that's not happening. A lot of people are, I mean, I see it all the time, bashing Christians, and in some cases it's due, in other cases it's not. If we look at, some of the last things that Pope Francis did, if we look at what Marion Boudet did, there are certain people, but they are not going to be widely. I mean, most of the people that go and follow Christianity nowadays are just following the cult mentality and the herd of what they think is what their leader wants them to do. It's not because they've actually done any in-depth study on what the Bible has to say, or any of the things that they're trying to spout and use as, weapons to hurt other people here. But we already had things established for law to protect people from religious persecution before he decided to start doing these things. That was already part of our Constitution. So if somebody's getting discriminated against because they're a Christian, if someone's being discriminated against because they're an atheist, either way is discrimination based on a religious belief, and that is illegal. So
Yeah.
the idea that he thought it needed to be done, and that even people that follow MAGA thought that this needed to be done, it's just evidence that shows you how very little they actually understand about their own civic setup and their own civic duty within that constitutional rights as an American.
Right. Well, I
Well,
mean, after he won, he did say that he loved the uneducated. So, I mean, it's been made perfectly clear by the people who still follow him, even with everything that's happened since January.
That is
mhm.
absolutely true. Um, it says
And I
here.
mean, he even, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry, it's fine.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, he even said he didn't know for sure if he had to uphold the Constitution.
Yeah, I
So,
know. That was the most
Right.
recent astonishing thing that was said. And here's the irony, because right here in this eradicating anti Christian bias statement from him, right here it says the very first sign, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered.
yeah,
But I don't know if I have to uphold the Constitution, but it gives me vested authority. Make
right.
up your mind, dude. You can't
You
be
That's
know,
both.
I don't even
woman.
know what else to say about him anymore in some aspects. I mean, the thing is,
I,
people, and it's like you said, make up your mind. I'm like, well, you know, as we've seen over the years and since his first term, we know that he's very contradictory in so many ways.
he
And he'll
really
say one thing
is.
to another. Everybody was warned for years.
This is something he said here too in this statement. The previous administration engaged in egregious pattern of targeting peaceful Christians while ignoring violent anti-Christian offenses. Excuse me, sir, why does Westboro Baptist Church still do hate crimes and nothing has been happening to them ever, not once?
Oh, yeah, nothing, not a single thing
I
has happened to
I
these
I
people.
I just I do not see how this is true. I'm not going to say, like I said, I have witnessed people be, rude and discriminatory towards Christians, like I have many groups. Because you know
Mhm.
what? Let's be real. There's discrimination and there's hatred towards every group of people in the entire world by someone, and that's the problem. That's the root problem here, is trying to eradicate. Why are we hating on other human beings for no just cause? I what is wrong with this country?
Right? I mean, why can't you have a perfectly peaceful person that is simply practicing their own religion without influencing other people, without even being evangelical, just practicing in their own way and living their own life, and we're going to come after them because they're not doing it exactly the same as somebody else? I mean, what?
Well, I
It doesn't
mean,
make any sense.
the Native Americans are great to bring up here because they weren't allowed to
Mm-hmm.
practice a lot of their spiritual beliefs, and burning sage and different types of incense until the 1970s. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was they got beat, they got arrested, they got sent to residential schools and completely cut off from their culture. And if they spoke their own language or did anything that, I mean, even just going out and praying to Creator in the middle of a field, they would be accused of witchcraft. And,
Mhm.
um, this went on all the way up until the 70s in the United States, and it's already actually it's honestly happening right now. Even there are women. There's a case of a woman who DCS stepped in to take away her children, and the reason that they cited her unfit was because of the fact that she was Wiccan. How does that make her an unfit parent? I mean, unless you can prove that this woman is negligent, she's not caring for that child is in an unsafe condition, she's got some kind of mental disorder where she can't provide, that child's being abused in some way, how is that child at risk just because their parent is Wiccan? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But they have, as of May 1st, this is really what kickstarted this whole topic for this podcast tonight. May 1st, 2025, the presidential action that was taken was the establishment of the Religious Liberty Commission. And this scared me a great deal and is really the bulk of what I want to talk about in the podcast tonight. We will do our regular segments, but really this is going to take up a lot of time because there's a lot to cover here. Um, I was told about this, and of course it says, the purpose and policy, it shall be the policy of the executive branch to vigorously enforce the historic and robust protections of religious liberty enshrined in federal law. The founders envisioned a nation in which religious voices and views are integral to a vibrant public square and human flourishing, in which religious people and institutions are free to practice their faith without fear or discrimination of hostility from the government. Now, there's a little bit of untruth in that. At the same time, there's some truth. They did not envision a nation where we would have religious voices and views integral. They were actually supposed to be separated from church and state. That is not what the Constitution or the founders envisioned for the United States of America at all, in any way whatsoever. And this is evidence of how people take things and they slew it together. And if you don't know your rights, if you haven't read the Constitution, you will not know this, and you will just read through it and think it's syntax when it's absolutely not. The other part where it says humans flourishing in which religious people and institutions are free to practice their faith without fear of discrimination or hostility from the government is true. That is something that the founders did envision. But the religious voices and views being integral in the public square, yes and no, but mostly no, because they did not want something like what happened with England and the church having so much power there. They wanted separation of state and church for a reason. But what he has written in this executive order does not state that at all. And so he is establishing the Religious Liberty Commission, and the commission will be composed of 14 members appointed by the president. Members of the commission shall include individuals chosen to serve as educated representatives of various sectors of society, including the private sector, employers, educational institutions, religious communities, and states, to offer diverse perspectives on how the federal government can defend religious liberty for all Americans. The president also shall designate a chairman and a vice chairman from among the members. The commission shall also include the following ex officio members or such senior officials as those members may designate: the Attorney General, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy. After hearing all of that, how do you guys feel?
It's going to be, basically, here are my hand-picked people that are going to enforce what I believe, and that's it.
And it's going to be brought down
exactly
on you.
what I got out of it.
They're going to be brought down to you by the Attorney General, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. That means the Attorney General, the Department of Justice is going to come after you, then they're going to come after you via HUD. So if you're living in housing or anything, they're going to come and see what you're doing, and if you're not doing what they think you should be doing according to this religious liberty, quote unquote, commission, you're going to be in trouble. And they're going to have an assistant to the president for domestic policy about this too. Now let me move on to why this is even more scary to me. This is very scary to me. Somebody sent me this post here I'm showing on screen from Reddit, and this is related to Eugene, Oregon, but it is, even though it's in Eugene, it's relevant to all of this. Youth for Christ is working their way into public schools. And as one commenter here on screen said, these people are not there to help the children. They are there to push their religious agenda and to indoctrinate them. Just imagine the outcry if they were Muslim. They can GTFO of secular society with their volunteer work. Let's take a guess at which ones are going to be prosecuted for child CSAM or any other kind of abuse against children within the next few years. And I absolutely, completely agree. They want to put these people in, and that's going to bring me to the next thing, which is this quote right here by a person we know as Mustache Man. And it says, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." It was his vision as part of World War II, and we shall go over here to the Holocaust Encyclopedia on Indoctrinating the Youth. The Yazis transformed Germany from a democracy into a single party dictatorship. As a part of this process, the Yazi German regime introduced their ideology into all aspects of life in Germany, including education, the arts, politics, clubs, and government policy. This process was known as Nazification. The article below describes how Nazi German regime indoctrinated young people with Nazi ideas at school and beyond them, shaping the future and indoctrinating the youth. This is what he said. These boys and girls enter our organizations at 10 years of age and often for the first time to get a little fresh air. After 4 years of the young folk, they go on to the Schmittler youth, where we have them for another 4 years. And even if they are still not complete National Socialists, they go to labor source and are smoothed out there for another 6 or 7 months. And whatever class consciousness or social status might still be left, the Wehrmacht, the German armed forces, will take care of that. Adolf, 1938. Students are to become propagandists. The education was basically them sending in the same kind of things to ensure that these kids were indoctrinated. And that quote is one of the scariest things that always comes to my mind, especially when we look at how many things are measuring up that are exactly the same as far as the alignments between both Trump and Adolf is concerned. So that brings me to this next thing. There is a documentary on Netflix called The Family. And this family, it's from 2019, but like I've told everybody before, and I'll say it again, if you have not watched this, you need to watch this documentary. 2019, it says an enigmatic conservative Christian group known as the Family wields enormous influence in Washington, D.C. in pursuit of its global ambitions. And if you watch the documentary, they talk about two specific things: a book called The Jesus Book, and also the 48 Laws of Power, which is, if you haven't read it, again, one of those kind of, it will open your eyes to the way that these people think. And the trailer even says it's not about religion, it's about power. But they lead to believe that this is based off of an idea to form that more puritanical society where they have everyone in there on this idea that they're going to ensure that children are, getting what they need out of the Christian national movement that they're trying to move here. And it's cult mentality. I mean, the only kind of people who do things like this are people who want absolute power and control. And that is exactly what we're dealing with our president. So, yeah, that's basically exactly where my mind went with all of this. And again, the parallels are just undeniable, you guys.
They have been for a while. It's just people brushed them under the rug. I mean, most of us here have been trying to tell people this for at least the last 2 years since Trump started running again. We tried to say, this is going to happen. And people would tell you, like I got told many times, you're fear-mongering. There's no proof of that. It was fine last time. It'll be fine this time.
But it wasn't fine last time either.
Project 2025, like when that came out and that was widespread and everyone was like, oh, he's not even a part of that. And I'm like, how many times did they say his name?
I was talking to my mom about that, and I said, have you even looked in it? She's like, oh, I've never heard anything about that, but I was wondering about what he's going to do about our taxes. And I was like, that should be the least of your worries. Go look up Project 2025. I don't think she ever did, though. And that's basically what we're dealing with. It doesn't matter how many times you tell them if they don't listen and actually go read the things. And that's also why this is so dangerous, because those who do not know their rights lose their rights. And look at the way that they're changing the wording. And since we're all wordsmiths here, we know how much of a difference little changes here and there can make to the entire meaning of something.
Because then they can twist it in however way they want. Just the right ambiguous statement oh, well, we can assume this means that, or we can construe this from that thing. And it's like, no, it's pretty darn clear in the Constitution what the laws are and what the Constitution says. But now we're rewriting it to where it can be interpreted in multiple ways.
And then for him to say things like, oh, well, I don't know if I have to uphold it. I'm not a lawyer. But yet you're signing executive orders for the creation of things like this using the terms by the vested power in me according to the Constitution and the laws of this country. Mm-hmm. You either are using that to be the rule of law that you can build on, it is the standard, it is the way it is, or you are not. You cannot do both things at the same time. You cannot be a tyrant and a president of a free nation. It doesn't work that way. There's nothing great about that. The only thing that's great for is you. And this is something funny. Somebody said, this week his newest thing, and I thought this was ironic too with the religious stuff going on. He wants to open Alcatraz, which is going to cost a fortune, is really not financially feasible. After saying he wanted to have the homegrowns be next. And somebody posted, it would be great if we did reopen Alcatraz and he gets charged with treason and sent there. And I said, I think we should allow him to try to escape, just to see if he really is as great and undefeated as he says he is.
It's macabre, but it's true.
Oh, that would be like the perfect karmic justice, though, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like his karma needs to come back during his life, not after.
Right.
And and this is a man that has a son too, and so you already see that this is a man that wants to indoctrinate the rest of our children, because again, like Hitler said, if you give me the children, I don't care what the fathers do. That's basically what it comes down to. I'll just ship them all off to a concentration camp, and then I will raise their children to be everything that they did not want them to be. And there will be nothing that they can do about it, and I will have a standing army of little minions that do exactly whatever I say and worship me like I'm a god. And that is exactly what Donald Trump wants.
Exactly.
Well, then I'm going to tell him right now he'd have one hell of a time with my kid. Because he's not going to do whatever they say.
That's why they want...
almost 4, but yeah.
That's why they want to go after all of our support systems and the educational system for any of our kids that show really any kind of rebellion or, honestly, neurodivergence. They don't want them. I would not put it past him if he could to make lobotomies legal again. Yeah, he's that kind of person. And there was a video I seen earlier today where there was someone that was talking about how he is a narcissistic sociopath. And I've been saying that for a while, and I told another one of my friends that's a horror and a true crime fan. Any of us that are horror or true crime fans that have been watching this, you don't even have to be a psychologist. There's just certain things you start to notice because of pattern recognition about people like that, and he exudes every single one of them. You have to be a total idiot not to see it. You have to be totally, completely blind and brainwashed to not see that. Or you're the same kind of person and you want to elevate those kind of mentalities because you want to be in the special people club.
Yeah. I know I had a friend, I had to kind of end that friendship this year because I didn't realize it was this bad. Me and her had been friends since I moved here back in 2000. Like first day of school, instant buddies. And she had posted something months ago about, him not being perfect, but being chosen by God. And I was like, that is loaded. And I was like, okay, no, this does not work for me at all. I can't do this anymore. So I just left.
Yeah, there are just certain things that it doesn't matter how much you like someone, that once they say something, reveal, you can't come back. And it's not even, I mean, there are people that I love that voted for Trump. Do you think I just
Hmm.
unloved them? No.
No.
Like, that's not how it works, especially if you're a
That
person
is
that has empathy.
hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's hard to give up on people that you love,
Yeah.
especially for something that's this huge, like he's obliterating rights on so many levels for different individuals, and then they have friends or family that are a part of these groups that are being further marginalized than they already were. And I just think to myself, how can you watch the people that you love hurt like that?
And not feel any kind of remorse or any guilt for what you did.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is, but with my own family, it's that, and also who I thought they were.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And when I seen that, I was like, wait a minute, they not like us, like K Dot
No.
says, like, wait a minute, everything that I thought has just been completely shattered right in front of me about this person. And it's almost a sense of betrayal, because you think, oh, here's a person I love, we have a connection, they love me, they must be a good person, they must, like, how could I connect with someone that doesn't care about other people?
Hmm.
And it makes you feel like you've been lied to and betrayed. But maybe the reality is, in some cases, I don't know if it really is that, as much as you want to believe people are like you, especially if you have they're great friendships. They start out, you think, oh, here's a great connection. And then later you realize that who you thought they were doesn't align with who they actually are. And the thing about that is, we can't love people for who we want them to be. We got to love them for who they are. Um, but when they do things that we know that we can't be a part of, we have to love ourselves too, and we have to draw the line somewhere.
Hmm.
You're gonna have to go on somewhere. Like. But with that said, Bev, let's get into your mental health minute and see what you got for us tonight.
Okay, so on the heels of that, um, the idea of comparison to other people comes up. So, as activists, as writers, we've all compared ourselves to somebody else. And, um, you can have all the great advice in the world when it comes to comparisons, but the truth of the matter is, the only person you can compare yourself to is your previous self. And comparing yourself to others is just, it's going to give you a lot of anxiety, a lot of negative feelings, and a lot of self-doubt. Because if, say in the writing world, for example, we're always saying, well, this person sold more books than I did, this person wrote a better story than I did, they have more reviews than I did. But they didn't write your book, you wrote the book. And no matter what that other person did, they did their own thing. So the path we each walk is so different that if we try that comparison, all it does is destroy ourselves. And that applies to activism too. I know a lot of disabled people who can't get out, who can't leave the home. People like myself, I can't, you know, can't put myself out there too much because of my regular job, or, there's certain people that, they're like, well, all I can do is do stuff online. I can't really do it. Well, it's still doing it. It's still doing something. And, we all do what we can and within our capabilities. And that comparison is just, it's killer. It kills your self-esteem. It kills your motivation. You can, that comparison will lead you down the path of not doing anything because you begin to think, well, what's the point? I'm not good enough. And it just, whenever you're taking these steps and trying to do something major, whether it be activism, writing, whatever it is, take the time to realize you're comparing yourself to your previous self. So if in writing you were able to write 2,000 words in a week 2 years ago, and this week you wrote 3,000, there you go. You're showing improvement. You're comparing yourself. But if you take that 3,000 words you wrote in 1 week and you compare it to somebody that puts a 100,000 word book out every 2 months, you're going to be like, well, why bother? I can't write that fast. Or, with the activism, just sharing a post to people that can do something, because maybe somebody that hadn't seen it before is going to see it, and it's going to impact them in a different way. So we all make small impacts, but enough small impacts can make a big difference.
That is all true. I feel like something stood out when you were saying that there's a book by Don Miguel Ruiz called The Four Agreements. And one of the agreements is always do your best. But he emphasizes on that, where he says you got to understand that your best is going to vary from day to day, especially if you're someone who's disabled or you have chronic illness. So if you're someone that falls into those brackets, some days you have a great day, you can do everything 100,000 times perfect. And then 2-3 days pass and you can't do anything, you can't get out of the bed, you're in pain. Still, what can you do that day? And those of us that have been sufferers of this, we can look, okay, well, I got to do some self-care. I got to do the things that are going to help alleviate my pain and, help me cope with what I'm dealing with so that I can get back to my better percentile and where I want to be. And not denigrate yourself because of it, not tear yourself down, not compare yourself to being when you're your perfect self and expect that when you're in a moment where you're not at your 100 level. You can't negate who you are just because you have a bad day. You have to look at assessment points and go, okay, well, where was I a year ago? Where was I so much, and on whatever aspect it is? As far as activism is concerned, it's really important that people not undermine how important phone banking and email banking and how important, honestly, sharing is caring. Sharing is caring. Actions speak louder than words. The very root of the word is active. How can you be active? Maybe you're not supposed to be the person that's rushing the riot police. That might not be your role. Maybe you're supposed to be the person that's the medic at the back of the line that makes sure whoever falls down in the front doesn't get picked up by the raid cops. You know what I mean? Maybe you're the person that's supposed to be the one that's doing, the jail bailout line. Whoever's getting picked up, who's protesting. And actually, here, last time we had protest here, the Eugene police arrested 4 protesters. And I knew it was going to happen. It always happens. More than likely, it will get thrown out, but they still did get arrested. People have to be there to be able to provide that support. Because a lot of times these people have never been arrested before. They have no idea what's going on. And the prison pipeline is an issue. So everybody has a different role in the revolution. Do not compare one person's ability to get in there and really throw some punches if you're not supposed to be the one throwing punches. Not everyone's supposed to do that. Some people are just supposed to be grassroots activists that inspire other people, and other people are truly revolutionary leaders. Does that make you lesser? No. Both are important. The revolutionary leader is not a leader if he doesn't have anybody to lead. I mean, everyone has a role. So basically, with that said, I feel like kind of a little bit of some of the things you said are going to lead me into the segment on how to refill your creative pot. And I actually found an article here that I thought was really good. This is written by, let me go up and make sure I get her credited, because it was really good. Her name is Lorna Faith, and it's 5 ways to refill your creative well. And it says 5 tips to fill your creative well. She has a book called The Artist Way that really kind of helps with artists finding ways to pour out creative ideas and then refill that creative pot, like I've said. And in times like this, if you want to be an activist, you got to get creative. So you got to find ways that are going to inspire you, because it's easy to doom and gloom, and we gloom scroll, and we're going and we're like, the sky is falling, and it's not that it's not. But okay, now that you've established that the sky is falling, what are you going to do to prepare for it? How are you going to brace for it? What are you going to do? Are you just going to get knocked out? Or what can you do? You have to find ways to transmute that energy and look at what you can do, even like I just said, according to whatever your best is that day, and find ways to get creative. So she says, so start here, take a deep breath, and remember your why. What are you doing this for? Why? Write down your reasons for doing the thing you're doing, why you're going to be working it out, what are the reasons you're writing the book you're writing down. Why are you creating a blog or a podcast? What's the point? And focus on that. Then explore and expand on those ideas on how to refill from drained creativity. Start by writing a couple of pages in the morning. This is a little bit more towards writing, but there's different ways you can take this. You can do this as journaling, noting. Some people, they do like scheduling, plotting. There's different types of ways that you can be like, okay, coloring and creating, scrapbooking, to start getting those things that make you think and start feeling more positive about finding a way to resolve a problem rather than just feeling completely disempowered, because feeling disempowered leads to being disempowered. It's weird how that works. So she says, don't let your inner editor tell you not to write down certain things. Just ignore your nagging critic. Write down all positive and negative thoughts that you have about your why. And she says she does that for 20 to 30 minutes every morning and has been amazed at the freedom it's given her to focus on writing and many other projects throughout the day. She says by trying it, you won't regret it. Take your inner creative child on an artist date once a week. So do something to play with your imagination. Remember what you were like when you were a kid, and you would just be like, and then all of a sudden this great idea came to you. She said in this exercise, go alone somewhere without turning your date into doing chores. Like, don't make it like grocery shopping or doing the laundry. It has to be something fun. Make it a date with yourself, something you will enjoy. Do anything that's not related to work, and make sure that it's something that you will love. Take a sketching class, go to a movie, walk in the mountains, go to a museum, go to a zoo, anything that you just know that you'll enjoy. See a play. I did that recently, and as I said before, it really helped me. By putting yourself in new and unique situations, you're filling your creative well with fresh ideas and inspiration. Sometimes you can just go to the dollar store and find some inspiration there, and it's you're just going through smelling the candles or checking out what they got for the new aromatherapy or something like that, and you just find yourself feeling more energetic and positive and creative. Try something new, even if it means doing it badly. Like, you don't start out being a great writer. You don't start out being the person that's making 100,000 word book every 2 months off the top. Nobody does. No one. That does not happen. That is something that is built. That is through discipline from the writer. That is through investment. That is through a lot of earnest want and desire and motivation to do it. And guess what? That's something to be proud of, because only a very small percentile of people actually become published authors in the world. It's something to be proud of. And you can apply that to anything. Start something and maybe it's a hobby and you do it terrible. Start crocheting and maybe it's a horrible, ugly scarf. Hold on to it and keep doing it. In a year, go back and look at the difference. And you're going to be like, wow, I was just doing this because it was something to keep my hands busy. Now look, it's art. Art starts out being messy and becomes beautiful with time and practice. Creativity is inspired by us making mistakes and going, oh, well, that didn't work, scrap it, and doing it over. Repeating and making something better doesn't make it a failure. It's just
Mm-hmm.
building it and creating it and going through the process to find what works. So sometimes you might be feeling blocked or empty as an artist, and because you feel like that, you have no way to guarantee that the work that you're doing is going to be perfect. It's not going to be your best work because you're just kind of like, I feel like this has not got the same emotion. I'm not as passionate. And I mean, we've all had to work a job where we had to write something and we knew that didn't have our full passion, but because we have been able to discipline ourselves, we're able to make it. And by doing these things, we can go, okay, I'm not feeling this. I'm going to take a walk around the block. I'm going to go feed the crows in my yard. That brings me a lot of joy lately. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, yeah, I could go do this and that on that project. Wait, this might work. You see what I'm saying? It happens. It's how the gears work in your mind. So once you're willing to accept that anything worth doing is worth doing badly, you give yourself the freedom to broaden horizons and the possibilities. So ask and answer this question for yourself. If I didn't have to do it perfectly, I would try. And what would you do? If perfection and doing everything 100% right didn't matter and you could do anything you wanted, what would you try to do? And just imagine the possibilities. The amount of doors that will open within your own mind and your own confidence are in and of themselves a jewel. Um, she says, number 4, color in a children's or adult coloring book or draw something. It might sound crazy, but she found that coloring with her teenagers in one of their children's coloring books helped her get the creative juices flowing. If you have children,
Mm-hmm.
they're another great way. Like, they will get you back with your inner child and play and make you see through the eyes of a child and remind yourself why the imagination is beautiful, what can be done with a dream and with a mind when it's used. And drawing does that, and kids just being around them can make you really come back to going, creativity doesn't have to be that complicated. We all have a creative spark. Every last person has some brain power to create something, and like I said, even if they do it badly, the greatness and the talent doesn't come immediately. That's built up. I mean, raw talent can be there, but even when you get raw talent, it has to be worked on. Okay, so moving forward, because we're really running out of time, I told you guys this was going to be a long one. Read the books that you love just for fun. Go find books and authors and on subjects and topics that you love, and get into them, and see, what it feels like to just be a reader again and enjoy a story, because that too is most of the time people that start writing a book, their initial idea to write a book comes off of them being a reader and going, you know what, I'm going to try it too. And it's usually not perfect on that rough draft, you know what I mean? So that's what I got for refilling your creative pot. Let's go and turn things over to you, Kendra, real quickly, so that we can have you talk about your green thumb and what's going on there.
Yeah, so I don't really have a ton to talk about today. It's racking my brain trying to think about it. I mean, I went in the garden yesterday. It was great. I planted some alyssum in 2 of my beds, and I actually had 2 pack of whites and then another pack of like purple. And I was like, I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do with these because they're different colors. My husband said, mix them together and throw them in there. So that's what I did. So it's going to be really pretty. And I've been trying to really foster a lot of wildflowers, native things, to make sure to protect our pollinators. Because, as everybody knows, for a garden, especially if you're growing vegetables and fruits and stuff like that, it's really important to have those pollinators there. Trying to draw the beneficial insect too and keep out the stuff that we don't want. So another thing that I did, and this will kind of draw me to what I decided on talking about initially, is it says, side knows I've been growing I started some strawberries in an intelligent planter inside the house. It's got lights, it's got the water, It's got the nutrition and stuff that goes inside the water to make sure that anything that you have in there will thrive because it's not in the dirt. They're great if you don't have a lot of space outside, like if you live in an apartment. They're not always the cheapest thing. The one that I got was donated somewhere and then given to me, but when I looked at the price, it was probably about $60. The one my mom has, which is bigger and a lot better, has more spots in it to put things. It was only like $40-$50 for that one. So realistically, in the long run, you'd probably definitely get your money's worth. But last night, I was talking to my mother about putting these strawberries in the ground, because in the intelligent planter, if you just leave stuff in there to continue to grow and produce, you do have to take them out and rinse the roots off every couple weeks, or you'll get root rot. I didn't know that. My mom had to tell me. So I went, and my husband actually got 2 pots for me, because instead of putting them in the ground, because I didn't have enough room, I've got blueberries out there now. I put them in these pots, and she kept telling me about their root system is going to be great. I promise you, because everything that I've taken out of these that I've started has had the most amazing root system I have ever seen. So I took the strawberries out, and she was definitely right. There was one that had this massive clump of roots, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get it out of this that's like little, it's like a little plastic kind of like cup that has holes in it and stuff. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get it out of here without ripping the roots to shreds. And I mean, I took it out. I tried to be gentle. It did not work out great, but it still had plenty of roots left to where when I put them in, I knew that they'd still be okay. But damned if she was right. I mean, she really was right. And she's been doing this kind of side hustle with hers, where she's starting certain plants and then flowers, herbs and stuff like that. She's getting them strong enough to go in tiny pots, and she's selling them, and she's selling out. So it's like, if you need to make extra money, this thing can definitely help you with that. And then to give you a good starting point to feed your own family, to get something outside and get it strong enough to go outside and get in the ground and really produce for yourselves, and really not have to depend on the food system so much, because we all know the food system right now is suffering some supply chain issues.
Yeah.
And so the more self-sustaining you can get, the better at this point. And so if, like, go back to my original point with these, if you have an apartment or you don't really have a lot of space where you can grow stuff outside, but you've got a decent amount of space inside where you can set maybe a few of these things, you can grow pretty much anything in them. And you can always start there. And if at some point you can expand, great. But it's a good starting point. And it's not super, super, super expensive to start. And seeds are cheap.
Awesome. Well, that's some great advice, and I'm glad to hear that you were able to recoup some of it, sounds like.
Oh, yeah. I got most of them. Some of them I let get pretty big because I was too worried that moving them would kill them. And my mom was like, no, they'd be fine. They'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And I was like, okay, I'm trusting you. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, I've got my fingers crossed for you. For the next segment, it's, especially with what Bev had been talking about with activism, I wanted to talk a little bit. We ain't got a lot of time, so I'm not going to go a lot into this. We'll probably definitely be going more into it later. But I wanted to go over this fact sheet that I have up here. This fact sheet is about acoustic weapons, directed energy devices, rubber bullets, and other kinetic impact projectiles, stun grenades, and other disorientation devices, tear gas, and other chemical irritants, along with water cannons. So basically, this is us breaking into the actual tactical methods and weapons that they use. This I feel like is important because ICE has recently been seen in tactical gear, and that does scare me too. They have been breaking into people's homes. I don't know if you guys seen the story about the mother in Oklahoma and her 2 daughters. but they actually broke into their home and it wasn't even the correct home. And the daughters were practically naked teenage girls, and they forced them outside, took all of their cell phones and their electronics, seized them. And then, even after they discovered that they were not the people that they were even going to the residence for, they refused to give them their items back. So, it's important that people understand what kind of gear they can have, and that they are breaking into homes, and that they are using, you know, technology that, while it seems like it's supposed to be, it seems like it's supposed to be non-violent. Well, I mean, it's not non-violent. It's not supposed to be. It's non-fatal. However, that, even with that being the case, as we come over here, because I started here, and here we have just the reality is crowd control weapons can cause serious injury, disability, and they have even caused death. The fact sheets below describe the health impact of acoustic weapons, directed energy devices, rubber bullets, stun grenades, water cannons, and tear gas. They also outline when and how those weapons are supposed to be legally used. They're often illegally used. They also have tactical armored vehicles. So, with ICE being now in tactical gear, I'm concerned about them getting armed vehicles next. It may seem a little outlandish, but I would not put it past them. Why is ICE in tactical gear anyway, if you get what I'm saying? But basically, I've already talked a little bit about chemical irritants, and I've talked a little bit about, you know, what tear gas can do. But as we go into our next podcast, I'm going to go over each of these, and we're going to discuss what each different weapon looks like, what it can do, when it's supposed to be used, and what the outcomes of using it has shown to be, as we've seen in protesting in the past. And with that said, that pretty much summarizes what I got for us today. Is there anything else either of you two would like to discuss? Awesome. Well, it's been a great podcast, like always, and I appreciate both of your time, especially yours, Bev. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your trip. And Kindra, I look forward to hearing the updates on your plants from here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Good
See
night,
you guys
everyone.
later.